Welcome to Meg's Voice Studio on YouTube for our first video. I am so excited to be here. I'm so excited to be sharing long-form content that is hopefully more meat on the bones when it comes to information. So the ultimate goal is that we just kind of share the knowledge, share the love, share the experience, all of that good stuff. So today I had the absolute joy and honor of sitting down with Cara DiPietro, who is light through and through. She's a wonderful human being. Obviously, you know her from TikTok, you know her from Instagram. Her platform is all about musical theater, it's all about mental health, and it's all about just like her experience walking through this life. So we sat down to talk about her journey, to talk about social media and musical theater, just to talk about life, honestly. So I hope you enjoy it. And I think that you're such a good role model. Here we go.
This room that you're in is so beautiful.
Thank you. This is my office.
So gorgeous.
Thank you. I love it. It's so bright. It's so bright.
Wow, so bright.
Okay, Cara, hi. Thank you for being here.
Yes, of course.
I'm so happy to have you here for a myriad of reasons, but mostly because you are truly just a ray of sunshine. And I think that you're such a good role model for everyone in this industry, younger, older, whatever. I think it's just wonderful that you have really used your platform for good. So I really appreciate you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. That means like truly so much.
Oh. So first, let's start with, how are you?
I'm good.
Yeah,
I'm good. I'm good. It's been nice to be back in the city for a minute.
Yeah.
I have a summer here just because I kind of was like traveling around a lot last summer.
Yeah.
So I'm good. What about you?
Booked and busy. Look at you.
She was. Last summer it was like running around. It was also an exercise and like I didn't know how to say no at the time. And so I was just like saying yes to everything.
Yeah.
But a little bit. So I'm just like taking it easy this summer, which is easy, I say with air quotes.
Yeah. Yeah. So tell me about this whole saying no journey for you. How did you reach that point? What happened?
I always joke that I'm someone that doesn't learn my lesson until it punches me in the face. Like I sometimes like we get like signs of like, maybe you should do this or maybe you shouldn't. I need it to like knock me over the head for me to understand. There's like no subtlety for me, apparently.
I love it. I love it.
It was just the whole, like, I don't know, we're taught as like humans in all forms, but especially like in the performing arts that like you have to say yes to everything.
Yeah.
To some extent, like that is true, and there's a time and a place. But I was just to a point where I was like saying yes to everything and not taking into account like how I felt about the things that I was doing. I was doing it to appease others and make them happy.
Yeah.
And I've like really, and then I got really burnt out. It kind of just like it totally like I say that I'm a very social person with a very limited social battery that needs to be recharged a lot. And I learned that last summer. And kind of felt like I had to give all of myself to the people around me and had nothing left for me at the end of the day. So this last year has been an exercise in like setting boundaries, figuring out the things that like make sense for me at the time, and also like actually looking at my schedule and being like, could you make this work? Yes. But like at the end of the day, like, is it going to take something from you to make it work? Maybe. Then maybe you should like, actually think about it.
Yeah, instead of stretching yourself too thin, because the way that you present on social media, you're a working actor, you're an auditioning actor, you're at Gales, you're like basically a resident performer at 54 Below. You're doing all of these things, and it's so interesting to like see how that is managed, even in like your daily vlogs and stuff. How do you feel like you have managed this past year?
Pretty up and down.
Yeah.
You know, there have been sometimes where I felt like I've been very good at it. And there have been sometimes when I'm like, oh, I bit off more than I could chew.
Yeah.
Kind of like it's been very up and down, but I feel like I'm at a place now where I have really learned how to manage it and how to compartmentalize things and how to set boundaries. And I feel like I've also surrounded myself with people in my life that if I have to like double down and say, wait, I have to take a step back, they're like, okay, heard, no problem.
Yeah, that's so nice. Yeah, and so important. Good, I love that. Okay, let's back it up to college Cara, especially because people are starting to go back to school now. or starting college, all of that. Tell me about your college experience. I know from watching your TED Talk, hello, um, it was kind of like an up and down kind of experience.
Yeah.
Can you share a little bit about your journey there?
Yeah. So it's so funny because I had a really great college experience. I went to Elon University, and I feel like you hear so many horror stories about BFA programs and like the stress and the toxic things that some professors can put on their students. And like I know I can say that I had such incredible professors
Mm.
who, supported me wholeheartedly, and never ever pushed a narrative that was like, especially in terms of like, I don't know, like my own personal recovery was like toxic and harmful.
Hmm.
Um, I am such not to say that like other people didn't have that experience. That was just like my own personal experience that I really
Hmm.
like, and I really want to like make sure that people know that.
Yeah.
Um, because I am a really firm believer that like kind of that toxic culture that I talked a lot about in the talk
Yeah.
has is generated and sustained by us.
Mhm.
And it's something that unfortunately we cultivate as performers and like as humans. And I always kind of use the example of like, okay, so someone went to a bunch of auditions and they posted like a bunch of pictures of a headshot in their story and that little like equity number. And they're like, oh my gosh, like 3 to 3 done today. And then you look at that story and you're sitting on your couch and you're like, oh gosh, like I should have done that. I should have
Mhm.
been doing that. You immediately start to judge yourself and you're like, I'm not working hard enough. I'm not doing enough. So then you get up the next day and you go to 3 ECCs
Mhm.
and you post on your story the same thing so that you can feel that external validation from everyone around you that you're doing enough.
Mhm.
And like, I'm so guilty of this. So many of us are so guilty of this, but
Yeah.
it's so hard to like, it's so easy to blame all of the exterior forces. And to some extent, that's true. But at the end of the day, like, we are the ones that continue to cultivate that kind of culture.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And so that was like a lot of my college experience was looking around at my peers. And it felt like a constant competition to see who was working the hardest and doing the
Mhm.
most, for sure.
Yeah. So how are you able to take the competition, or are you able to take that competition or comparison out of your social media? I mean, you're surrounded by seemingly so many like theater influencers who are doing the same thing that you're doing. How do you not compare your content or yourself or what you're posting to what they're posting?
Honestly, I do. Like I do that every single day. I
Yeah.
do it so often, but I think the difference is that I try to like really acknowledge when I'm doing that,
Mm.
look at it, try to figure out like, okay, where is that coming from? I really try and like look inside myself to be like, okay, where is that coming from and how am I going to deal with it?
Hmm.
And when it comes to the content that I post in response to those feelings, something that I don't take lightly and take very seriously is that like my age demographic and the people that are watching my videos are very young. They're from like ages, I want to say 12 to like 25 is like my main demographic. And the things that I say and the things that I post, I know, carry weight. So
Hmm.
when I'm having those issues and when I'm having that own self comparison, like that's something that I bring into therapy, and that's something that I
Yeah.
talk to my partner about. It's something I talk to my dad about, my stepmom about, and something that I like. It's one of those things that I try to not let that be an impetus for me to self destruct and spiral even further, because
Yeah.
it's true. Like oh my gosh, all I do almost all day is compare myself to other people. It's what we do, but
Yeah.
it's the way that we choose to deal with it and navigate it that I feel like is so
Mhm.
important and makes the difference.
Yeah, I love that. And it really does seem to be like inbred in this industry, especially of comparison. And that's so hard to even navigate. So I can't even imagine doing it in the industry and outside of the industry to
Yeah.
such large extents, but also public extents.
Yeah. The public part of it is very interesting and something I'm still kind of trying to wrap my head around, because
Yeah.
it's one of those things like, oh, I've dealt with these things forever, but now I'm dealing with them in public.
Yeah.
It's very interesting. Like it's a very interesting thing to navigate.
Yeah, I'm sure it is. I'm sure it is. And I'm sure it has its like really cool moments of like, oh my God, people know who I am and like support me via the screen, whatever. But then to have that attention is also something so weird,
Yes,
not normal.
very weird. That's what
Yeah.
someone had to explain that to me. I was like, why am I having such a hard time with this thing? And they were like, Fred, this is weird. Like, this
Yeah.
isn't normal.
Yeah.
And they had to like tell me that, be like, oh, you're right. Like, this is a weird circumstance.
Yeah. And
But
kind of circling back to what you said about like posting, I was at this many auditions for this, whatever. We as humans, we're not meant to take in that much information from that many people. It's just too much. And the fact that we have such immediate access to it is so dangerous. It's
so dangerous.
crazy. It's
And
so crazy.
it's such a, it's so hard because you have to remember that like it's a highlight reel, you know?
Right.
Like I
Right.
can even go back and like one day I'll do this where I'll like go back on my feed and be like, do you see these posts? Like this is actually what was going on in my life when I posted these. And I
Yeah.
looked like I was living my dream, but
Yeah.
this was what was going on. And like that's always happening. You know, we
Yeah.
always say like social media is a highlight reel, but like it is.
It
It
is. Yeah.
absolutely is.
Yeah. That's why I so appreciate you sharing. Like, just, I guess last week I came across one of your videos that you were like, I'm just like not doing okay today. Like, it's just been a lot. And I so appreciate that because I was like, well, hey, me too. I'm so glad that it's something that, A, you're able to share and be vulnerable with, but that you do share it because it really is so validating to other people.
Yeah, my rule is if 14-year-old Cara needed to hear it and it won't take anything from 25-year-old Cara to say, I'll say it.
I
And
love
that's
it.
kind of like the good boundary of like, because oftentimes the answer to that is like, oh, yeah, that might take something for me to share. Great,
Yeah.
I won't. But if it's one of those like, oh, I was vlogging today and I got cut from an audition, like do I want to, am I thrilled that I got cut?
Yeah.
No, but like if I had watched someone that I was like, oh, like I wish I was doing what they were doing and I wish I was in New York auditioning and they shared that they got cut from an audition and went about their day, I would have been like, oh, that made me feel so much better about the audition that I got cut from last week. You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. And I love that you do that. And you've shared that early on in your journey, your therapist said something like, well, why can't that be you? You always said, I wish I had somebody to look up to. How has that evolved since first starting on social media to now?
It's crazy. Like
Yeah.
it's so wild and it's so funny because a year into when I like first started posting, I think I had like 50,000 followers. It was during Catch 'em If You Can. It was when I was like really starting to like, oh, maybe this is a thing I can do.
Yeah.
I remember texting my nutritionist, no emailing her and being like, hey, we haven't talked in like a year, but I just like need to tell you this thing that you said to me. It's such an impact. This is what I'm doing. And she responded and she was like, I've seen your videos. Like I've
That makes
seen,
me want to cry.
yeah, right. And so I'm like waiting for the TED Talk to come out so I can send it to her and be like, hey,
Yeah.
like another update. Like
Oh my God.
it's so crazy how
That's
it's
so cool.
evolved. It's
Yeah.
so wild and it's given me a sense of purpose outside of
Mhm.
just like being an actor and a performer, which
Yeah.
I never thought I would ever have.
Hmm.
In a sense of like identity and another passion, which is so
Yeah.
exciting and it's so necessary too.
Yeah. I wonder how you find working in your passion. Like, obviously, musical theater is a passion for many. It's so weird when your passion becomes your job. And then you have to like start to make money and it becomes like how you pay your rent. I wonder how you navigate that in musical theater, but also know that and social media.
Yeah. It's kind of something I've been saying a lot. I was saying this to a friend the other day about something so random is that like two things can be true at the same time. You know, like
Mhm.
I can love what I do and it can also be so hard. And that
Yeah.
goes for anything. Like, I don't know, like being out of town for a
Mhm.
contract. Like
Mhm.
I love being able to be paid for what I do, but I also miss home. Like
It's so
and
hard.
yeah, and like like you can be grateful for something, but also have a hard time like
Mhm.
really navigating it. And something else that I've been trying to really carry into like this year of my life is if it's not fun, why am I doing it? If I don't love it, why am I doing it? And then, unless it's like going to work or like paying your taxes or doing something like going to the doctor and doing things that you have to do, like life is just far too short. So something that I've always tried to do specifically with social media, especially when it started to become like a source of income for me, was like I always have to protect the joy around it and the joy I have for it. Like especially when it's on my terms. So like there will always be like I work with a lot of brands and companies to like promote their products, and in exchange like for like that is kind of how I'm able to monetize my social media. And like that's work. But the rest of social media, like that should be fun. You know, if it's not fun, I feel like I have to be doing it. Why am I doing it?
Yeah.
So I try to like I post what I want to, the content, like sometimes there are weeks go by and I don't really post about theater. Sometimes it's all I post about. Like I try to really gauge where I'm at in my life and what's bringing me joy, and like let that carry me through.
Yeah. That's great. Protect the joy.
You have to, especially in theater too. Like there comes a point where like so we like take for granted that this is what we do. And for so many of us, like you might work 2 months out of the 12 months of the year if you're lucky. That's just how the jobs are. Like the last time I worked a contract that was over a month was, I want to say, a year and a half ago. Like sometimes they're just so short. And so like it's something that you have to be so intentional about, is like staying present and staying grateful for these opportunities, and like remembering like this is what you love to do. And if it's taking something from you, that's something that you have to like look deeper at. Like, okay, like why am I putting myself in a situation that I think I have to put myself in because I feel like it's what I have to do?
Yeah. That's so wise. Where did you get all this wisdom, Cara? You're 25.
No idea.
It's awesome. It's so
a lot
awesome.
of trial and error.
Yeah, I get that. So you have shared so much about your journey with eating disorders and mental health, and how have you gotten through all of that, and what sort of advice do you have for students entering college or in college? How can they get through it?
Utilize the mental health services at your school. And if the mental health services aren't enough, utilize the communities that they have in those spaces. If you're someone who is religious, there are always those religious organizations and those groups that you can find community in. Oftentimes there are support groups. There are always like AA groups on college. Like there are all sorts of support groups. You have to have a team behind you if you're going to make it work. Like that's the only way. And whether that be a professional team, a team of your peers, one professor that is your rock, a person at home, like you just have to have people that can meet you where you're at. And that's so important because the college is crazy in and of itself. And if you're studying theater, it's absolutely mental. Like it's so much crazier, and it's hard because no one really else on campus, unless you're going like a conservatory, really gets it, really understands that like you are taking 8 classes while they are taking 4. And after those classes, you're rehearsing all day and night. Like truly there's no rest for the wicked. But you have to have a team. You have to have a team behind you.
I wish that was something that was more I guess it just talked about in even the college audition process and then college itself, because I feel like, at least in my experience, I'm a little bit older than you, so I think things started to change when you were in college. I think that nobody really talked about mental health within the musical theater industry, yet we were the ones who really like needed it the most. Because life is so crazy, we had no sense of balance. We had no sense of how to care for ourselves. And then it manifested in ways that were just unhealthy. And in college, at least in my experience, and kind of like what you have said in your TED Talk and then other podcasts, like when people see you and they, I only had time to eat 1 apple, people praise that. People are like, oh my God, you must be working so hard. And then it's the hustle culture again. It's just such a toxic cycle that I feel like isn't addressed by the people who need to address it. I think with
Yeah.
people like you and other graduates of programs, yes, it's starting to be addressed, but is it addressed within the programs themselves?
Yeah, I think it's really, I feel like I left college at a time, I graduated college at a time when it was starting to become something that was much more talked about. And it was that like post pandemic, people were really starting to talk about it.
Yeah.
Um, I think it's also interesting too because I've been having a lot of conversations recently with some people that were a part of the industry 10, 15 years before I ever entered it. And
Mhm.
I feel like I just entered it. Truly, I really do feel like I'm just now entering it and trying to figure out what it is and how it works and what
Yeah.
it looks like if I can do it forever. But I think a conversation that I've been having a lot is that like our generation is starting to have the conversations that they were told could not happen.
Yeah.
And I think it's very much like we see it in like general parenting. You know, we see the things that come about and the issues that come about with our generation that our parents have a hard time navigating because it
Yeah.
was taboo and they didn't talk about it and they didn't address it. And
Yeah.
it's just not the way it worked. And how maybe 10 or 15 years ago, it was like auditions were very cutthroat and it was every
Mhm.
man for themselves and you sometimes had to cut other people down to get ahead or you had to stick to your own guns and you had to protect yourself because people were mean and people would take advantage of you and people would like cut you down.
Mhm.
Whereas nowadays like I a couple months ago went to a Grease audition. It was a Grease audition and it was like I feel like I'm starting to get to the point that I've always heard about where you walk into a room and it's like the usual suspects.
Yeah. Yep.
Like you see your friends, you see the same people.
Yeah.
And it was just like, I don't know what was wrong with all of us this day, but like someone didn't have the side printed and someone was running late or someone was like, oh my gosh, I need a snack. Like it was just everyone was a mess.
Yeah.
It was very much like oh, here, I have my straightener in my bag. Here, take it. Or it's like, wait, don't print it. Just take my side when you go into the room. Like,
Oh.
yeah, or like, here, wait, use my lip gloss, or like do this kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I think that's part of I think as our generation starts to step into those positions of power, which is something that
Mhm.
is starting to happen because all of the people that founded these traditional BFA programs are retiring. And
Yeah.
we've seen that transition over the last 10 years, a lot of like trying to reformulate these programs that these people built from the ground up and figuring out who's going to take what spaces. I think as that shift starts to happen, we'll start to see so much more of an emphasis on mental health and like prioritizing it instead of
Mhm.
being like an afterthought.
Yeah. Thank goodness.
Yeah, truly,
We need it.
truly.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I'm so glad that you had that experience of like
Yeah,
togetherness because in such an industry, Wendy, it's like showing the humanity of it all. I think that's
it's too. And
lost.
also, like, I don't know about you, but like, I don't have time for people that aren't kind.
No, no,
And
no, no. Goodbye.
and everyone that I honest something I always say is everyone that I knew that was unkind and didn't treat others the way that they would want to be treated
Hmm.
doesn't work. They
Yep.
don't work. And they're lonely and they're sad because at
Hmm.
the end of the day, like no one in college told me like really explained to me how small this world was.
Yeah.
You know, everyone does know everyone, but like I don't know, this world is there's what we do is too lonely, too isolating, and too heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Like weekly heartbreaks.
Yeah.
The fact that you are being like that you are being told no multiple times a week, sometimes for weeks in a row, is so lonely and isolating. You have to
Hmm.
find community. You have to support each other, or you're not going to have
Yeah.
anything.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's that, and I also think it's going on contract and then becoming so close to these people and then leaving them a month later. It's like suddenly the people that I love are now gone, and it really you're the only constant through it all. It's really is such a lonely industry sometimes. So I'm so glad that you have found your people and your community.
Yeah, me too. It's been a long journey. It's been a
Yeah.
long. It's like I look back at it and it's been very long, but very intentional. Like I know I understand why it took the time that it did, and will continue to take the time that it does.
Yeah. For the people who are graduating, this is their last year.
Yeah.
What are things that you wish you knew in college?
Oh gosh. I think kind of one of the things I just said.
Yeah.
Um, no one tells you how many jobs and opportunities that will present themselves to you that you don't necessarily audition for.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and how a lot of times it's being in the right place at the right time, and
Mm-hmm.
how connections and networking is so important.
Yeah.
We know that, and we get that. Um, but it's something that I had no idea.
Yeah.
Um, that like it's all about. I mean, just the other day I watched a friend who was like, surprise, I'm last minute like taking over this role in this contract, and shared that it was because he knew the person that was playing the role before, who ended up booking something, had to leave the production, was like, hey, I have to leave. What are you doing? Can I pass your name along? Like,
Yeah.
no one,
Yeah.
it happens so often.
Yeah.
Um, and I think another thing is like the college bubble that you live in is so small. It is so small. And the best thing you can do for yourself is find people that are in the industry right now that weren't a part of the industry 5 years ago, weren't a part of the industry 3 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
that are in it right now, and talk to them about what it's like.
I love that. Oh my goodness, that is so smart because the people who are older will bring their jaded experience into whatever advice they'll give you.
Yes, and it's even like a like, oh, like you should be doing this because this is what's happening on Broadway right now, or like this is what people are asking for in the room. It's like that was 2 years ago. It's changing
Yeah.
every month, you know?
Yeah.
It's like, and just because it worked 5 years ago doesn't mean it's
Hmm.
true anymore.
Oh my goodness, no, this industry is so different
And
than
it
it was
changes
5 years
on
ago.
the reg. Like it
On the
changes
reg.
so often. And so that's something that I feel like I have watched. There's this program called IAMT here in the city.
Hmm.
And I know some people that have been a part of it, and I have some friends that work on the admin side.
Hmm.
And in talking to them about it, I was like, oh, the cool thing about IAMT is that they're like all of they prioritize having professors and teachers and coaches that are currently working. And I was like, gosh,
So
that's
important.
so useful,
Yeah.
because they're able to real time be like, this is what's happening. This is what people are asking
Yes.
for, what people are looking for. Like, that's so valuable. So, like, take everything that you can from your professors,
Yeah.
but also find someone in the city to be a mentor or like a point of
Hmm.
contact to be,
Hmm.
to like also chat with, you know?
Definitely. That's fabulous advice. That is so good. I love it. Very good. Cara, thank you for your time.
Of
You are
course.
truly just light. Just light.
I'm so
So,
honored that you thought of me, truly.
of course, of course. Thank you, and we will see you soon. Thanks.